Hi and welcome back to Darvanalee Designs Studio. For those that don't know, my name's Nicole Reed and today we're up to block 8 in our block of the month series. We're doing foundation paper piecing. This is the block that we're doing. It's called the Sedona Star. So let's get started. Okay, so you're going to head over to the blog and you're going to download your template pieces. There's 3 files there. You'll need to download the template pieces to make the block. You'll also have a layout page and a colouring in page if you want to play around with some colours. You're going to need your fabric and also your leftover fabric if you've been doing the sew along for the last 8 months. You'll have some scraps there. You can use some of those. You're going to need some quilting rulers, either just your normal quilting rulers or at a quarter, a rotary cutter, some pins, a glue stick and a little hand press that I like to use, or you can just use your iron and your ironing pad and a quick unpick just in case. Alright, so I'm just going to move all this out of the way and then we're going to get stuck into creating our templates. Off camera I've cut out all my templates and so we're just ready to get into the sewing. Okay, so I've got template A here and you can see that we've got and for those that are new that may have just jumped into it, we've got a dark grey and a light grey and then a white area. So the dark grey represents our black, the light grey represents the red that I'm using, and the white represents the white that I'm using in the quilt. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my template, I'm going to turn that over, grab my glue pen and just put a couple of little marks on there just to hold this first fabric in place. And I'm going to place that down with the right sides facing up. And it is bigger than what I need, so I'm okay with that. Then I'm going to flip it back over and I'm just going to create my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to place my piece of template plastic or postcard or whatever you're using onto that line, and then I'm just going to grab my at a quarter ruler and butt that up against there and then trim off the excess. And get rid of that. I'm going to open it back up again and I'm just going to turn it and I'm going to do exactly the same thing again, laying that template plastic on that line, folding it back and then just laying my at a quarter against that, and then I can just trim that off. And then on this end here I can just take off that excess fabric and pop that aside. Alright, so the next colour that I need is black. So I'm just going to grab my black fabrics. And it looks like I've got plenty of fabric there in this little piece, which is great because I can use up the leftovers. And I'm going to flip that back over again and just make sure that that is going to go across, and it is. And I'm going to place them right sides together, lining up those edges there. Then I'm just going to pop a little pin in there to hold it in place. And then I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch on this line here. Okay, so I've stitched that down. Don't forget to reduce your stitch length down to a smaller stitch length because that will help to perforate the paper and help to remove that paper later on. So now what I'm going to do is just flip that back over and gently use my hand press to make sure that it's all pressed. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to now place my template plastic on this line here, and I'm going to get rid of that excess fabric. And then I'm going to turn that and I'm going to do the same thing on this line here. So you see there I've just got a little bit of excess there, not too much, so I can just put my at a quarter ruler against that and just trim off that excess, and then it's done. Okay, so the next piece that we're going to do is A3, and again this is a black piece of fabric. So I'm going to flip that over and I've got to cover all this area just here. And you can see here I've got a very weird shape piece of fabric out of my scrap bin, and basically I can just lay that on there and flip it over to make sure that that is going to go. And you can see here that it's not covering it, so I may have to just adjust it a little bit. So I'll bring this side over, and I can see there that that is going to cover all that area, so I'm pretty safe to pop that in. And with angles, I always like to cut a little bit bigger piece of fabric, like use that, because it just, the angles can trip you up sometimes, and you just need to be aware that even though it looks like it might cover, it's still maybe just a sharp angle and you just don't have quite enough. So if you've got a little bit bigger piece, you're not going to run into that problem. So just pinning that into place, and then I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew on this line just here. Okay, so I've just removed the pin out of that, I've sewn it into place, and I'm folding that over, and I'm just going to give that a gentle press with my hand press, and then I can flip this back over and I can get rid of this excess fabric. So where I want to lay the template plastic now to create that 1/4 inch is along where A3 and A4 meet. And then I can just use my 1/4 ruler and get rid of that excess fabric. And that's big enough to put back into my scrap bin, and I might be able to use that for a future block. Alright, so you can see there that we've got that nice angle, and this is a little bit of excess, and we'll get rid of that once we've finished doing the template A. We can get rid of that, and then it'll be ready to add into the block, but we don't need to worry about that right now. The piece that we're going to be putting on is A4, and we've already got our seam allowance there, and so we've just got to grab our white fabric. And if you find this piece is moving around a little bit, just get your glue pen and just put a little bit of glue there, and that'll just hold it into place for you, especially if you're going to sew such a long angle. You don't want it moving on you. Alright, so I'm just going to grab my piece of white fabric, and again it's another angle, so I've always got a bigger piece that I use for my angles, and I'm just going to line up our raw edges, and then I'll pop a couple of pins in there because it is such a big piece, remembering to place them right sides together. Okay, so now I am ready to head over and sew on this line here. Okay, so we've sewn that into place, remove our pins, and then we're going to flip that over, smooth that out, and then just get our hand press and give that a nice little press. I really like using these hand presses because it just saves you getting up and down to the iron or the ironing board. Alright, so at this point in time I can now trim this up, and I'm just going to place the 1/4 inch mark on the dark inner line, and the edge of the ruler is on that outer line, and I can get rid of this excess fabric now. Okay, and now we've just got one piece to add on to this template, and that is the red piece. So I've got a piece here, and I've just got to trim off this excess under here, so you can see there I've just got to create my 1/4 inch. So I'm going to place my template plastic on that line, and then I'm just going to get my 1/4, butt that up against the paper and get rid of that little bit there. Alright, so now I'm ready to add that red piece on. So lining up our raw edges with the right sides together, I can see that there's plenty there, and then I'm going to pin that into place, head over to the sewing machine and stitch it into place. Okay, so I've removed those pins, and I'm just going to roll that over, and you can see there we've got beautiful angles, a lovely point down there with a 1/4 inch to spare, which is good. That means that we've sewn everything correctly. And now what I can do is I will put a little bit of glue on this one because it is a big piece and I don't want it to move when I'm trimming it around. Flip that over, and I'm going to trim off all the excess fabric from around the template. So placing the 1/4 inch mark on that dark inner line and the edge of the ruler on the outside line, and you're just going to trim that away. And you'll continue to do that all the way around the template. And last side. Our template A done. You're going to repeat that with the remaining of your template pieces. You'll have 4 of these units in total, and then when you come back we'll be ready to assemble the block together. Okay, so I have all my blocks done. I'm just going to grab my layout sheet, and you can see that there, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab template A and we're going to place that there. I'll just move my layout sheet over a bit. And then we'll get template B, and it goes there. Then template C, and then template D. So you can see there that that is the layout according to the layout sheet. And now what we need to do is join these all together. So all you're going to do is take template B and place it on top of template A, making sure that all your raw edges are aligning and none of your fabric has curled up underneath. And then you're just going to place either some wonder clips or pins. Either one can be used. Most people like the wonder clips for this sort of thing, but I use my little glass head pins, and I make sure that everything is lining up, and I can see that that is ready for me to head over to the sewing machine, and then I'm going to stitch straight down on that dark line there. Okay, so we've stitched that into place. I can remove the pins now. And I can open that up, and I can see that I'm not going to lose any of my points. Just give that a finger press, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing to C and D. So I take template C and I lay that on top of template D, making sure that none of my fabric is curled up and all my raw edges are aligning up. Then I'll just grab a couple of pins and do exactly the same thing again, place them in there, and then I'll head over to the sewing machine and I will stitch on this line here. Okay, so we've removed the pins out of that, and there is our pieces all set into place. So now what we are ready to do is to add row 1 to row 2, and all we do is basically take that on top of each other, making sure that your seams are going opposite to one another, because there will be a little bit of bulk with this one, and you want to make sure that they are going to line up in the center. Nest your seams, grab yourself a wonder clip and pop that there, because it is a little bit thick. You may struggle to get a pin through, and that's just because we've got all those points coming into one another. Okay, making sure that your fabric is not curled up in any way. You want to line up your raw edges, pop a couple of pins in there because this is thin enough to put the pins in, and then you're going to head over to the sewing machine and you're going to stitch on this top line here. So you can see there my fabric was curled up, so I want to make sure that that is all laying flat. And if need be, just put a dollop of glue there from your glue pen, and that will just hold your fabrics in place for you, because they do sometimes fold over like you've just seen. Alright, so I'm ready to sew that in place. I'm going to stitch along here, making sure I reverse at the beginning and at the end, and then our block will be complete. Okay, so there we go. Our block is now complete, and that is block 8. So give that a really good press and set that aside with the rest of your blocks, and I'll see you all again next month for block 9. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do hope that you enjoyed making the Sedona Star block. It was a quick and simple block to go together. And if you did like this video today, give us a thumbs up down below. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here, and the little bell icon beside it, and that way you won't miss out on any future posts. And for those that don't know, my name's Nicole Reid for Darvanalee Designs Studio, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.